If you don't know it already, Stormclaw got a nice little buff in the last patch. Now the passive damage bonus on the Great Staff of the Crone applies to Claw as well. However, some people have said that the Paingorger's Gauntlets got a little bit of a nerf because of changes to interactions with the Great Staff of the Crone. But between the buffs and some optimizations I did for the build, I was able to clear at pit 98. That's 7 pit tiers higher than my previous best. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the changes I made and all the details you need to know for the build if you want to try and climb with it. Now before we get into the details, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Also come by my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/screamheart. Now let me show you what I got. So for the people that have already seen my previous videos, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the changes so you can do that more quickly. But for everyone else, I'll go through everything you need to know. So first off, the main change is that we changed our Keystone passive away from Bestial Rampage, which before we were using the Wild Heart Hunger with the Bestial Rampage, and we had Legendary Pants. Now instead of that, we're going with Lupine Ferocity, which is actually a lower damage multiplier, and we don't get all the bonus attack speed. But the big difference here is that we're able to use other runes because we don't need to use Bulwark in order to maintain our shapeshifting stacks. And the runes we added in are the Ahuzan. This is giving us guaranteed critical strikes and overpower, and it's based on lucky hit chance, which we have a lot of. This alone increases our damage quite a bit. Also, now that we can move our Direwolf's aspect to a different slot, now we can use Tybalt's Will. The nice thing about Tybalt's Will is it has maximum resource and a damage multiplier. So the maximum resource is contributing to our adaptability, which gives us damage based on max resource, and we're getting that 20% damage multiplier. Overall, all of these changes add a lot of damage to the build, but in my written guide below the video, I went ahead and added a different tab called Pit Push and left the endgame one as it is, because even though the Pit Push one is the stronger version, I feel like the endgame one is actually more fun because it's higher attack speed. So I'm going to leave you guys both options and you can pick the option that works best for you. So for anyone new to the build, we're starting with Tempest Roar, and this is going to make our Storm skills also Werewolf skills. That's very good because with the Great Staff of the Crone, we're using Claw, which is a Werewolf skill, and it's automatically casting Storm Strike, which is normally just a Storm skill. But with this combination, both of our skills are turned into Werewolf skills. So now they're both Storm and they're Werewolf. Then on top of that, we're using the Rabid Bear aspect, which is making both of our skills also poison damage, whereas normally one of them is lightning and the other's physical. So this synergizes them to the same damage type. Now Rabid Bear aspect only works when you're in Grizzly Rage, which is our ultimate, and to stay in that ultimate we have to use Direwolf's aspect. This allows us to use Werewolf skills instead of Werebear skills when we use Grizzly Rage. To prolong the duration of that Grizzly Rage, we're using Rampaging Werebeast, and this is going to extend our duration and increase our damage. Everything else is pretty much damage. So we've got the adaptability, like I said, it's max resource converted into damage. Shroud of False Death, which gives us a lot of passives in our skill tree, which is mostly damage, but some survivability as well. The Tybalt's Will for the damage. However, it also has a strong damage reduction component, and we're always unstoppable when we have Grizzly Rage on, so we always have this damage reduction. And then last but not least, we have Paingorger's Gauntlets. Now, like I was saying at the beginning of the video, people are saying that these are no longer working with all of the interactions on Great Staff of the Crone, but I tested these against other options in the slot, such as Fists of Fate and the Moonrise aspect, and this is still the best option. And it wasn't even close. This is significantly better if you test it against the harder content. For the Spirit Boons, I'm going with Gift of the Stag, more of that maximum resource for the damage, Avian Wrath for even more damage, Swooping Attacks for the attack speed, but you can go with Iron Feather if you need the life, Calamity for ultimate duration, and Masochistic for healing. If for whatever reason you can't keep up your ult very well, you can go with Calm Before the Storm as well. Speaking of keeping your ultimate up, make sure that you temper Grizzly Rage cooldown on all 3 of your jewelry. And if you need it, you can go for Grizzly Rage duration. But between the cooldown reduction on your gloves and these 3 cooldown reductions, plus running the Spirit Boon, you shouldn't actually need one, but use one temporarily if you do. Or like I said, you can use the Calm Before the Storm. One more little note on the gear. When I was testing my Tybalt's Will, I also tested it compared to a pair of pants that had +6 to basic skills and 5 additional ranks from the Stormshifter's aspect. Now you'd think 11 skill points to both of our skills that we're using would be good enough to compete with the Tybalt's Will, and it was comparable, but I think the Tybalt's Will won it in the end, especially because it has the additional damage reduction. In the skill tree, we're going with max ranks to both our Claw and our Storm Strike. On Storm Strike, we're going for Fierce Storm Strike so that we can apply Vulnerable, and if you wanted to eke just a little bit more damage, you might be able to get away with going for Wild Storm Strike if you take the seasonal power that gives you Vulnerable, but it's a small enough difference that it should be negligible. For our Claw, we're going with Wild Claw. Then we're maxing out Heart of the Wild for more of that max resource, and Predatory Instinct for more critical strike chance. we're grabbing Cyclone Armor and we're going to Preserving Cyclone Armor. This one's very important because it helps us pull enemies together and group them up, which you'll see in the gameplay. We're maxing out Backlash for more damage, Ancestral Fortitude for more resistances, and Vigilance for more damage reduction. For a Blood Howl, we're getting Innate Blood Howl, and this is a 25% damage increase. And another one of the reasons why this version of the build is giving us more DPS is because we're not shapeshifting out of our werewolf form anymore, so this stays on permanently. We're also maxing out Feral Aptitude for more damage, and I actually don't have the points in Nature's Reach right now, but I do think if you're trying to push in the higher pits, and you can get away with losing some survivability, it is worth using the Nature's Reach. Like I've said previously, the Paingorger's Gauntlets do damage to enemies that are further away from you, and it's actually a pretty good amount of damage. So as you're pulling enemies together, you're going to be doing a decent amount of damage to even enemies you're not hitting. For a Hurricane, we're getting Savage Hurricane to reduce enemy damage, and if you need a little more Hurricane duration, you have Endless Tempest here that you can put points into as well. We're maxing out Toxic Claws and Envenom to get as much damage as possible. Same thing for Defiance and Resonance. You can technically get a little more damage from Natural Disaster, but this is only going to apply to bosses when they're staggered. We're getting a little more damage from Catastrophe, more damage from Quick Shift, and then more damage reduction and movement speed from Heightened Senses. We're maxing out Grizzly Rage, and we're getting both additional points. And then for the Keystone passive, we're going with Lupine Ferocity. We're not able to fully max our critical strike chance in this build, so this actually helps quite a bit, but you still want to get as much critical strike chance as possible, because even though we're going to be getting guaranteed critical strikes from the rune, and a guaranteed critical strike here every third hit, there's still a fair number of hits that will come between those. But this does allow us to focus more into attack speed. For our Paragon boards, we're going with Keeper on our first board. Moving up from here, we're going to attach the Heightened Malice board, and here we're going with the Spirit Glyph. To the left from there, we're attaching the Sinister Tendrils board, and here we're going with the Earth and Sky Glyph. Moving back across, we're going to be attaching the Thunderstruck board, and here we're going with the Fang and Claw Glyph. Finally, down below that, we're attaching our Lust for Carnage board, and here we're going with Dominate. Now, I'm probably going to have to do more grinding to really determine which one I like more, but I was up between Dominate and Headhunter, but I do think Dominate was doing more. But keep that in mind if you're trying to push, you can try both of them. For the seasonal powers, I'm going with the Corrosive Vapor. I've got Bottled Wind to give us more survivability. If you did want to replace one to get the Vulnerable, then that's the one you'd replace. We're going with Fractured Core to remove enemy damage reduction, and then Bloody Charm to get Executes. And this is extremely effective when we pair it with Disintegrate, which is basically always there. So make sure you're mobile as you're fighting enemies, because if you use this to execute a lot of these smaller minions as you're fighting a group of enemies, that removes enemies that the Storm Strike's going to bounce between. That means more damage will go to the priority targets. And actually something I keep forgetting that I didn't even use for my Pit 98 clear is that you can actually use a different infusion here. Because we're using the Rabid Bear aspect, we're passively applying rabies to enemies. That means they should pretty much always be poisoned. So you can go with the Nebulous extract, which will reduce enemy damage, or you might be able to get a little more damage if you go for Thunderous Particle. But feel free to experiment with those. For our Elixir and our Incense, I'm going with Elixir of Advantage for the attack speed. If you happen to already be capped from your gear, you can go for the Elixir of Fortitude. I also run Blessed Guide for the willpower, Redamine Buzz for the maximum life, but you can go armor here if you need it instead, and then Soothing Spices for the all resist. That should pretty much cover it for this version of the build, but make sure you guys come and stop by my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/StreamHeart, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks for watching. Daddy Druid out.
Subscribe to Scream Heart. He's more than an old fart. He makes lots of fun builds. I promise his streams chill. He should probably be faster. Come watch this disaster.